Hello, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us today. So today we are honored to have Dato' Ong In Bin from OCBC Bank Malaysia and also Datin Shin from YYC Group joining us to have a panel discussion regarding how business can ride the lockdown wave. So if you are a business owner or you have friends which is owning a business or running a business, feel free to share the link for them to join in this panel discussion as well. So for those that are joining, we'll be starting at 3 p.m. sharp. So there's still a few more minutes for you to get your friends to join in. So a bit of my background. So my name is Sui, and I'm the founder and CEO of Newswave. If you haven't heard of Newswave, I think you should go and search it out because especially during this pandemic period, news and information is pretty important for everyone around the world, not just in Malaysia. So Newswave is a news aggregator which provides you all the news from different sources in Malaysia. So you can get what is the latest news about the COVID pandemic happening in Malaysia and also the business news and all the information that you should know during this MCO period. So feel free to head towards the App Store or Google Play to download Newswave after this session. And once again, for those that just joined us, welcome you. So today we are going to have a panel discussion about how your business can ride the lockdown wave. We are honored to have Dato' Ong from OCBC Bank Malaysia and also Datin Shin from YYC Group. Hello, say hi to everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, so we will also be having a question that is open to our live audience. So during this discussion, feel free to leave your question or any comments in the Facebook Live comment section. Our team will try to look into the question, and we will have the question to ask Dato and Datin as well. So there's one more minute. Share the links out and ask your friends to join. We are going to start soon. We are seeing Crystal is here. Sufan is here. One more minute to go. For those that just joined in, thanks for coming in. So again, the topic of our discussion today is about how your business can ride the lockdown wave. So it doesn't mean lockdown wave is bad for everyone. It can be a good sign for certain business as well. So we welcome all of you to join our panel discussion to see how you can ride the wave of this lockdown period. All right, good afternoon, everyone. So it's 3 o'clock sharp, and we will beginning our session today. Good afternoon. My name is Sui, and I'm the founder and CEO of Newswave, a news aggregator. So I'm very honored today to host this panel discussion, which is regarding how your business can ride the lockdown wave. And we are very honored to have Dato' Ong from OCBC Bank Malaysia and also Datin Shin from YYC Group. So maybe we can start by Dato' Ong. Maybe you can briefly introduce yourself to our audience today. Dato' Ong?
Thank you, Sui. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me. I started my working career in 1986. Actually, that's a long, long time ago. And I recall that was one of the worst times also in Malaysia. In fact, I recall when I graduated and came back to Malaysia, the unemployment rate in Malaysia was 10%. I don't think you've ever heard of that before. But just to be positive, there were also job opportunities then. So my first work experience was actually with Price Waterhouse. I was started as an accountant just like Datin Shin. I had an opportunity to subsequently join OCBC, and I've been with OCBC for 32 years. Thank you.
Wow, 32 years with OCBC, that is a very long period of time. So I believe that Dr. Ong can provide a lot of insight, especially in the banking industry to us today. So next, Datin Shin, thanks for joining us today. Can you give a brief introduction of yourself to our audience today?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Shin, CEO of YYC. Firstly, I'm very honored to be with Dato and Sui together on this session together. Dato is such a busy man, and so experienced as well. So I'm sure everyone is looking forward to hear from you. And I always forget that you were also ex-auditor. Fantastic. For us, YYC, we are a 46-year-old company. So we've been through also the 80s recession, 97, 08, and now 2020. And this time round, we have helped around 100 over companies to really help them with what we call CFO on call. And because this is our brand promise, which is empowering entrepreneurial success. And so our CFOs work from morning 9 o'clock until evening 9 p.m. because in this time, it's very critical that we assist this business owner come up with direction, strategy, and ways to overcome this 1 in 100 years crisis. Back to you, Sui.
Thank you so much, Datin Shin. So great introduction from you guys. So I guess we'll start with our very first question of the day. So I think this question we would like to ask Dato. So Dato, you have been in the banking industry for more than 30 years. This is something extraordinary. Not many people, could stay in one line for such a long year. So we believe that with this so much of time spending in the banking industry, you should have a lot of experience. And one of the things that we understand within this banking industry for so many years, you should have gone through a lot of different crises. But have you seen anything like this happen before?
Okay. Actually, if you look at banking as a whole, it's been through a lot of crises over the last century. In fact, OCBC was actually born out of a crisis period. So we always tell people not to fear a crisis, but you have to be prepared for it. In the last 20 years alone, I think banking has got easily 5 crises, including this particular one. The difference between this crisis and the other crises that we've got through is always unique. The difference is that the connectivity in the world is so great together today. And whatever good news and bad news is shared instantaneously. And this can be a good and a bad thing. It creates a lot of panic. And that's why I think we will need to make sure that our people don't get over pessimistic and don't get over optimistic. And we've seen that happen in the newspaper when we look at how Wall Street behaves and how certain governments behave. Now, one of the things very different from this is many of these crises today is in a way government engineered, because the governments of today are balancing between lives, i.e. to prevent lives from being lost and to keep people healthy, and they're balancing with impacting business and livelihoods. This second part becomes more important as the days go by, because even for Malaysia, when we do a lockdown since middle of March, it already impacts the business. So health numbers seems okay. We don't have too many cases coming up. There are less people dying from it, but the impact on business has been tremendous. And this is also very pronounced across the world. If you look at the US alone, while they have less than 100,000 deaths, but they have more than 30 million people out of job. And the pain is felt on both sides, In fact, some people will say that the pain is even greater on the people who are living, but they have lost their livelihood. So it's something very, very unique. And we are still in the midst of this pandemic. That means it's not really unfolded itself. Perhaps a year from now, we look back and we can have a lot of learning lessons. But at this moment, governments are learning from each other. This is what I can comment at the moment.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dato, for your comment. So I believe, like Dato mentioned, pandemic or crisis is something that is inevitable. It will happen time to time, right? So I guess the next question for us to you is much more on, since right now the pandemic has happened and everybody is facing the crisis together. So how soon do you think this pandemic will end? And do you think that for the recovery will be a V-shaped or a U-shaped recovery, or there will be something else?
Okay, there are certain things that we maybe need to be aware of. Is one of this is a health pandemic. And when it's a health pandemic, I think people put lives ahead of most of the things. And people's psyche has been affected very greatly. And also the nature of our economy have shifted quite substantially. 20 years ago, Malaysia was predominantly a manufacturing and agriculture economy. But today, as Malaysia developed, just like many countries who have gone to a more advanced stage, services becomes a bigger component of our economy, services and consumption. So when we talk about services and consumption, we're talking about F&B, retail trade, logistics, education, healthcare, and all these sort of things. And these businesses involves a huge amount of human contact, and you need huge congregation of people to make business successful. That means you open a cafe, you need to have a lot of crowd. But this pandemic has firstly engineered by the government for safety. They have, even as they sort of open up a bit, they have introduced a lot of measures to minimize the spread of the disease. And this virus, unfortunately, is extremely contagious. Although it's not fatal, the fatality rate is still very low, but it is contagious. And people worry so much that they'll get COVID-19 that they will be very cautious. And the other thing about this is that during this lockdown period, and it's quite prolonged in the sense that it's almost like 2 months we've been in lockdown, and people have adjusted to life without going out. Some of them can't wait to get out, but some of them, they have adjusted, and they are also fearful. So as a result, when they open up eventually, many businesses will find that they can't operate like normal. And for some of them, they will have some difficulty to really make it successful. The business model cannot change, or they couldn't remodel. And as a result, this recovery will not be something that you can see a V shape unless totally the virus gets eliminated or totally just disappears. I doubt it will happen, and there's always this danger that it could come back again if we relax and all that. So there's always this concern at the back of everybody's mind. So given these circumstances and the heavy dependency on service sector, I think the recovery for Malaysia will be a little bit slower. It will more be like a V shape down, but coming up will be very gradual. So we will see some pain. There will be a lot of pain this year, and the pain will carry on towards next year, I believe. And the recovery will, no doubt it will improve. There's definitely no doubt that businesses will improve. But there will be people who may not survive. Let's be honest about it. But at the same time, for those who are able to survive, they will do better because there'll be less competitors in the market.
Okay, thank you, Dato. So as Dato mentioned, I think most of the companies are facing the same crisis as everyone does in the business sector. But eventually, I think most of the crisis will be recovered. It's just a matter of time. So I think we should just stay strong and make sure that we do things properly so that we can recover in the fastest time as possible. So thank you, Dato. And next question, I would like to ask this question to Datin Shin. So as we know, one of the key value provided by YYC Group is business consultation. So Datin Shin, can you share with us what can a business owner do to survive and sustain their cash flow during this pandemic period? Datin?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And to answer that, I've actually prepared some slides because I'm a very visual person. Yeah. So throughout this time from MCO until now, like I said, we've been very, very busy. We have conducted more than 5 online courses just to assist our clients to overcome this issue because it's very severe. A lot of companies, their sales have dropped more than 50%, and some even say more than 90%. So that's because of the sales drop, there's no profit. And because there's no profit, cash flow is super tight, and collection is also very, very slow. And so we term this the once in 100-year war. And for us, what we've done is we've developed a solution for it. We see the doctors and nurses are the ones outside fighting the health crisis. And even though they are tired, even though they have also their family, but they are so committed to overcome this crisis. And so similarly, for us, YYC, we have geared up our team to go to this war together with business owners outside. Because it's all about cash flow. It's all about having enough cash flow to survive this, to ride these challenges. And one of the key things that we ask everyone to do is something we call the financial stress test. And then until now, a lot of people don't get it. They ask, Shin, what is a stress test? So I just want to quickly explain this. Just like if we want to know whether we are sick or healthy, whether our heart have any issues or not, we'll go and see a doctor, and the doctor will ask us to go and do, the treadmill test, which is a stress test, and they will adjust from the slowest speed until the fastest speed to see whether our heart is functioning well or not. So similarly, the same concept applies to our financials. Under the worst case scenario, what would happen? Under the worst case, let's say sales does not resume, does not recover until, let's say, end of the year. I mean, of course, sales may go back to 50% or 70%, but what if is like under the worst case scenario, what will happen? And in those cases, the cash flow of the company, how long can it last for? Because one of the most common questions that many business owners ask us is, I have this much in my bank account, but I don't know whether it's enough to tide, 3 months or 6 months or 12 months, and exactly how much is enough. So by doing this financial stress test, we can find out under the worst case scenario, how big is the hole. And then we have strategies to cover the hole. And the strategies include what we call 3C1S. First thing is cash flow, how to prolong cash flow. Second is to reduce costs. Imagine sales has dropped so significantly, costs must drop as well, and costs must really be reduced. And a lot of business owners, I've one case, the good friend brought this client to this company to see us. What happened is their sales dropped 90% over from MCO until now, but they have not taken any cost-cutting measures. So the best friend was very worried and therefore brought this business owner to see us. And of course, they've signed up for our CFO strategies on call service now to help them combat this. And the third C is credit. That one is Dato' Ong's specialty, so I'll let him talk about that, because we need credit to be able to, if we don't have enough money ourselves, we need credit to be able to run this through. And all of these are very defend type of strategies. At this time a point in time, on top of defense strategy, we also need attack strategies, because we still need to find ways to recover our sales to at least to pre-MCO time. And some of the sales recovery examples that we share in our weekly webinar is, for example, number one, we have to pivot to do digital marketing now. Some people will tell us, Shin, I'm B2B business, I'm not B2C. How can I do digital marketing? But nowadays, all businesses or all our customers, they are on some form of digital platform, including Dr. Ong. I'm sure he's on LinkedIn. So if we want to reach out to our potential customers, we do need to have a digital strategy to reach out to the target market. And so that's one thing. Second, of course, now with the economy being in such a state, consumers don't have so much to spend, and therefore we do also have to offer value for money type of deals. And third, we also have certain deals like money back guarantee. Actually, there are many strategies that we cover, but what we see is lacking in business owners is many are still taking a wait and see approach, where in fact we do need to go all out to fight the war now. Yeah. Another thing that we share is a 13 weeks cash tracker. And this is important because we want to make sure we have enough cash. Many business owners, they don't look at their cash flow consistently. Maybe they look at it once a month. But in times like this, we need to have a view of our cash at least on a weekly basis. And of course, there are also clients or business owners who are in, let's say, essential services. They are not affected, but instead doing very well. So many of these customers have come to us and asked, are there any M&A opportunities? Which there are, okay? And finally, I just want to spend some time to talk a little bit about pivoting. If our business model now does not enable us to go further, we do need to look at how to pivot. Okay, so that's all for my sharing now. Oh, okay, just a quick one. Just as an example, YYC, we have also pivoted. We used to have in our business school a classroom style type of service, but we find that we can't do it at times like this. So instead, we now have an online, we call a book club, so that we encourage other business owners to read together with us through this platform. So this is the way we've pivoted. Okay, so all right, that is my part. I will stop sharing first. Okay, stop already. Just want to make sure.
Thank you so much, Datin Shin, for your insightful information. And I believe that most of us can get very good knowledge from your sharing. So we are now opening the floor for questions. So in case you have any question that you would like to ask our finance and banking expert here today, feel free to post your question in our live comment. So our team will be aggregating those questions, and then I will help you guys to ask our experts here today. So we got our first question from our audience today, from Ms. Wong. So Ms. Wong would like to ask Dr. Ong, when do you think the market will be back?
Thank you for the question. I think we are slowly coming back to a bit more of the opening up. So the opening up will be gradual. I don't think the market will fully recover until maybe 6 to 9 months. And it all depends very much on how the virus impact and the containment of the virus are quite critical in our strategy. Of course, this thing is not hard to predict. And as Datin Shin has mentioned, you always have to do two things. One is you need to be optimistic, because if you are not optimistic, your employees will all be very down, and it's very hard for you to keep their spirits up, and some may actually leave your company. So it's important to communicate optimism, but inwardly you have to prepare for the worst. So meaning that what Datin has shared is that you need to know what is your cash flow, and if that cash flow is not enough, what kind of credit backing, i.e. your suppliers, your bankers have in store for you to last through. But I would advise that if we want to be more conservative, plan for 12 months from now that the recovery will be slow and you won't get back to normalcy until 12 months from now, i.e. probably a full recovery will probably be in the second half of 2021. But we will see a gradual recovery probably from next year onwards. Now people are adjusting to the opportunity and the so-called gradual coming back of business. And there will be some hiccups along the way, because even the governments are having to learn and deal with this new environment.
Okay, thank you, Dato. So, Datin Shin, do you have anything to add on this question?
Totally agree with what Dato says. That we have to balance between having hope, but at the same time being very realistic about the situation now. I also agree that the market, there are two very extreme entrepreneurs. Some are very, very pessimistic, but it's like just waiting. On the other hand, there will be those who are too optimistic and again waiting. That one will be waiting for a miracle. But instead, I think for now, we do really need to decide fast and also to act fast in this market. And of course, we also have to learn fast, because things are changing so quickly. So, and it's not, I think, for a lot of business owners, there's no point complaining. We can't control what's happening outside, like what are the government policies or when the vaccine will be out. But what we can do is we can solve the problems within, and also to look at where the opportunities are. Okay, that's all from my side. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Datin Shin. So I got another question from our audience, Danny Tan. I think this question will be specifically to Dato Ong. So Dato Ong, do you think the bank still consider to finance tourism industry?
It's a tough call right now, but banks have for a long time been financing hospitality, leisure. Okay, it's been a so-called long-term strategy, because as you know, our country is moving to services sector for the last 10-15 years, and most of the exposures of bank in this area has increased. Now, most of the time, I think banks are looking at how to help our existing hospitality businesses right through this crisis. Sometimes, aside from giving moratorium, you may also need to help them to preserve their cash flow. And it's not just about giving them a 6 months moratorium or something like that. So most banks are really focused on this particular existing customer base. Now, for anybody thinking of venturing into hospitality, I would caution that you be a little bit more careful right now, because there are people who are entrepreneurs out there. They think that there's an opportunity. But let me tell you that the challenges are quite dramatic. As Datin also mentioned, you really do have to have a two-pronged strategy, because the face-to-face kind of business that you're traditionally used to, where you have a lot of restaurants and people come to your place, it may not happen. So you must be able to pivot to another digital strategy online, where you can still serve your customers online and stuff like that. But it's something that is a bit challenging at this moment, because you're not going to be able to see the visibility of cash flow until perhaps later part of this year. And during this time, how do you plan to meet all your costs and support your clients?
Good, thanks, Dato. So I guess one of the things to make sure that the business survive is to how you actually can manage your cash flow, your overheads, your sales, and all those necessary things that happens in a business. So I guess the next question, which is very relevant to this, is from Ms. Tan. So I think this question I will be directing to Datin. How to overcome the challenge of cash flow, sales, overheads, and business sustainability during this pandemic?
Yeah, over the last 40 over days, we have looked at many business owners' financials. And to be honest, many companies were already not so healthy before the MCO. So in fact, a lot of the cash is stuck at debtors, is stuck at stocks. So while we are in this MCO, it makes things worse because there's no sales to turn around. So we make all these business owners, entrepreneurs go back to basic. Now is the time that we need to instill the collection discipline. We cannot change what has happened in the past, but we can now still collect. And some people will say, so difficult to collect now, but we will go into execution details like who is in your collection team, how many phone calls you make a day, and as a business owner, are you involved as well? Are you in a daily huddle to help them solve the problems? And we go to the extent that we have red light and green light, we design a dashboard for these companies that if it is red light means something is not right and we need to solve. And we find from a lot of cases that it goes back to basic again. We cannot get the business owners, the debtors' telephone number, for example. So this is the time, this is war time, we say, we need very strong execution. And if execution may not have been the strength of some business owners, now is the time to step up. And as a company, we need to ask everyone in the company to fight with us to go through these bad times. And so collection is one. Second is stocks. We find a lot of owners also, entrepreneurs holding a lot of stocks. So we also have worked out many ways to make stock clearance because holding on to these stocks will not solve the cash flow issues. So that's another example. And of course, attack strategies, sales. What do your customers want now? We have a case whereby this essential service company, they're already doing very well because they supply to supermarkets. But they went one step ahead. On top of supplying the normal items to the supermarkets, they understood that the supermarkets want masks and sanitizers. This was very early on. And so they source for all these items to be provided to the supermarkets, and they actually they've done very well during times like this. So similarly, what do our existing customers want? And another case that we handle, the customer base is not doing so well now because they are affected. They are in F&B. So again, they have pivoted to another customer base, which is hospital line. So these are the things that we can look at to see how to overcome the challenges that we're facing now. And we have to do with utmost speed. And some people will say, oh, all these strategies, does it work or not? A lot of people have doubts. But the thing is, if we don't try, we will never know. So one thing that I always ask business owners to do is we have to DMS, do it, monitor it, and also solve it. And only by trying that we know what would be the outcome. And a good part of it is, of course, there are some things that work. Of course, there are also some things that don't work. But if we don't try, then, like I said, we wouldn't know. Okay. And of course, the whole great lockdown have sped up the whole going online process, going digital. I think it's moved us 10 years in advance forward. It's now probably 2030. The time that we're in. And so if we are just doing traditional business, I think it's no longer a sustainable business model. We do have to think of how to have an online, a part of our business online or on digital. And in the US, Heinz, a 100-year-old company, can finally move to also online. They also now have another channel. I'm not saying that retail channel doesn't work, but we do have to have more than one channel. Okay, so that's my sharing.
Thanks for that, Ting Shing, for insightful information. So I have another question coming from Carol Kwa. So this question is directed to Dato Ong. So since we have known that MCO has been for the past 2 months, and most of the manufacturing factories has been closed for a certain period, so how long do you think Malaysia's manufacturers can recover from that?
Thank you. I believe that manufacturers are quite resilient because of the fact that they've also got quite a lot of support, and the ringgit is quite competitive for them to do the export. And this is one area that I think the government has put a lot of emphasis how to help them recover. Besides moratorium that we have given, the banking industry has given to businesses and consumer, and that's where I would like to also emphasize is that coming back to what Datin Shin said, during this 6 months period where you don't have banks breathing down your neck, focus on how to improve your operations, your collections, your costs. This is something that is very, very critical. And at the same time, while we're also having this moratorium, for SMEs, Bank Negara has also injected 10 billion to support SMEs. And this fund was quickly used up in a matter of 2 months. So there's a lot of demand there. And on top of that, I think there are also other forms of funds that are available, such as the CGC funds, although those are a little bit more expensive. But manufacturers is actually in the priority sector for Malaysia because of the fact that a lot of our SMEs are also involved in manufacturing. They employ a lot of people. Now, when we were having a discussion with the finance minister, the Bank Negara, all of us were always talking about how to preserve jobs. And manufacturing sector is very, very critical in that aspect. They provide a lot of support across the industry. And I think if you ask me a question whether it will recover probably a bit faster than service sector, especially those F&B and all that, because you're producing things for either exports where there's less of this concern about social or whatever. So you have the export market, and there is a benefit of government policies to grow this sector. So I think they will recover a bit faster.
All right. Thank you, Dato'. So we have another question coming from PH. So this one is to Datin Shin. So since all countries are at different stages of the pandemic right now, can you foresee at what stage will the new normal for economic activities be up and running before having a vaccine?
Yeah, actually, the first country that went into a lockdown and has come out from a lockdown is China. So actually, we have been in very close contact with the businesses who are in China. And we find that in China, even though, things are moving back, there are operations, but many of the businesses are still impacted. For example, they were telling us that one in every 6 minutes, there is one F&B closing down. Of course, there's a lot of F&B in China. So, but at the same time, on the good side is traveling is within China is resuming to normal. Airports, there are people there. So I think that is good news. But the thing is, for business owners, I think we do need to think of how to co-survive with the virus. As long as the vaccine is not out, there could be chances of second wave, third wave. Nobody knows. And we don't know when the vaccine will be out. 18 months, nobody knows. But therefore, we have to formulate a way that we can co-survive with the crisis. So if in the past, our businesses need to have, there is a lot of proximity in our businesses, we do need to pivot to a new way of doing things. For example, can it not be location dependent or can it not be time dependent? So I have a case where we have a counseling business that does counseling. And the business is actually, there's a lot of demand for it, especially at times like this, because everyone is so stressed out. And so when they came to see us, they were thinking the counseling is one-to-one, right? So they had business, but they didn't know how to do, you cannot meet one-on-one anymore. So therefore we gave them advice. Why don't you do through Zoom call? And initially they were skeptical, say, how can, I need to see my patient and all. But after taking our advice, they tried Zoom call. Their business is very good because there is a new norm. There is a new way of doing things. And when will it go back to before? Will it ever go back to before? I think that we all need to see that. So therefore, every business, including ourselves, we need to find out ways to co-survive with the virus and keeping our people safe at the same time. For another example, we never thought that working from home is a possibility. We always thought, must come back to office 9 o'clock sharp or what. But it's now a possibility because it's not a choice. So these are some of the areas that I believe everyone must start to think now, and don't expect June or what, everything will just be normal. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Datin Shin, for the info. So before we started this session, we have also done a survey collecting questions from different people. And since, most of them know Dr. Ong will be here today, and Dr. Ong as the guru of banking industry. So we have few, I think, question which is a bit tough, but I believe that Dr. Ong can help us to address the question today. So one of the questions would be how to get loan financing from bank if the bottom line figures are not positive.
Okay, thank you very much for that tough question. The good news is that for banks to be able to lend, banks have to be very strong. And I think the good news is that over the last 20 years, learning from the Asian financial crisis, with the help of the regulators, banks have become extremely strong in Malaysia. So we are very well capitalized. We can stand what Datin Shin said, the stress case. We have done so many stress testing by central bank and internally that we have even projected this situation and how we can cope. In fact, we also jokingly tell Bank Negara that if we can get through this crisis, don't ask us to do any more stress tests because we can tell you that we can survive. Okay, so I think to that question, everything will be affected. There are some companies that will go into a big loss. There are a lot of companies who will have substantial drop in profits. So do not fear the issue because this will be actually quite normal. In fact, if you look at many of these funds that the government is availing, many of them have this special so-called requirement that you are in trouble because of the current crisis. Then you should apply for this because it's meant to help tide you through this. And most of them, if you believe that this crisis will eventually blow away, many of the funds, including the most recent one, the Dana Jamin loan, they are meant for 3 years because they also believe that during these 3 years, businesses should slowly recover, and by the end of 3 years, it will be back to normal. That's the way I think we position it. So important is if you are making some losses, I don't think that's the end of the world. You, however, should have some reserves. You must have a plan how you will manage through this crisis. And if you need your suppliers, bear in mind it's not only the bank itself that's giving you the business. A lot of SME rely on not just banks, but a lot of creditors, support, suppliers. So these are the people you should also continue to engage them. It's so important, the communication. And it's also important to share your business strategies. If you have somebody like YYC to help you, it will also help you articulate your business plan to all your suppliers of credit, whether it's a bank or suppliers and even your own staff, because they're all shaken. Will I lose my job? Should I look for another job somewhere before I get the sack from the bank, from the company? So these are the things that you need to do during this time. So don't worry if you are taking a little bit of hit in your P&L and your balance sheet. It is actually normal.
Great, good point from Dato. Thanks a lot. But following up to this question again, so since right now with this pandemic issue, many businesses facing a crisis, whether it's a small crisis or big crisis. But the question would be, does the bank planning to relaxing its lending benchmarking or accept lesser security upon granting credit facilities to their customers?
To be honest, banks will not normally relax their lending so-called standards during this time. Most likely they will tighten a bit more. However, banks have this motto that I think their values and their philosophy is we want to support our customers. Many of you out there who are business owners, you already have a bank to help your business. You can be sure that your bank will be supportive of you to survive, because it's in no one's interest for you to actually go through a failure. In fact, yesterday I was having a chat with one F&B player who wanted to throw in the towel and actually wind up the business. But we told the person not to do it, and we actually even advised him, maybe you help us. We find somebody who may be interested. You may be very pessimistic. There are, like I say, there are pessimistic people and there are optimistic people. There may be people who think that you have built some brand in your F&B business that they would like to, and they have some deeper pocket, for instance. So we actually advise them to keep the business for now, and we look for somebody who can maybe take over your business rather than you wind it up, because it creates a lot of hardship for everybody, your landlords, your employees, and even some of your bankers. So these are the things that banks will always want to do to keep businesses afloat if whenever possible.
Okay, thank you, Dato. So we have one more question coming up for Datin Shin. So right now, due to the MCO period, most of the business are facing declining sales. So do you have any advice or guide for them to how to get more sales during this period or after the MCO has been lifted?
Yeah, in fact, there is 11 sales strategies that we could use to reach out to the whether to our existing customers or to the new market. I'll share some of them with you. For example, we could look for some of the customers or quotations that we sent out, but previously they rejected us. Maybe it could be due to high price or some of the terms inside. We actually advise some of these business owners to do this, and in fact, they have managed to close back certain projects or certain contracts because of taking this action. They revisited back all the old quotations. Previously, there must be some reason. So offering a special price or offering a special value to be inside. Second is, I find that money back guarantee always works, because as business owners, if we are very comfortable or we have confidence in our product and service, if you offer this out to the customer, there's no risk to them. And in fact, we also have many customers offering certain bundles now. So if you are a consumer with money now, now is a good time to buy things because there are many super deals outside, including let's say some cosmetic deals. Because ladies, we would know that it's good to get. So from a business owner point of view, again, we need to see what are the things that the clients want. And at the same time, some people, we can also get our whole team to also work in marketing and sales as well, especially times like this, like what Dato says, instead of scaring our people, every day scold them or every day just scaring them, very charm, but instead we should be gearing them all out to go fighting with the company. And so we do have certain customers, they do ask even their operations people, HR people, finance people to join into the sales and marketing team to cross-sell, to come up with content to put on the platform suitable for them, so that they can reach out to more customers. And we have one case whereby this customer, that when we advise them to do that, and they actually executed it very well, they managed to get an export contract from Italy, even though it's times like this. So they were really happy because they didn't just wait, and they took action to actually try that out. So these are just a few of the strategies. There are actually many more. Most importantly is we need to keep trying. Yeah, I keep saying that we need to keep using new ways to do things, because it's no longer business as usual. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Datin Shin. So we have, during the MCO period, we also see that the OPR rate has been reduced a lot by central banks. So Dr. Ong, what do you think in the future? Do you think that our central bank will keep on continue to lower the rate, or what's your comment or opinion on the OPR rate?
I believe that the Bank Negara is very sensitive that businesses who are in the borrowing side, they will benefit tremendously from the cut in interest rates. Every time there's a cut in the interest rate, like the most recent one, 0.5%, I think almost 5 to 6 billion savings of interest is generated by the industry. Those who have their loans tied to base lending rate and base rate. So there's a lot of benefits in that sense. But on the other hand, there are also a negative side is actually it does penalize savers. So at some stage, you could have the danger of having a liquidity trap. That means people just don't want to put their money in the bank, and they do go into other areas which may not be always good, something speculative or buy shares and all that. So we have to be very careful. But I suppose that central banks across the world has literally done everything they can, and many of them are almost zero or negative interest rate environment. So Malaysia actually is one of those few countries that also at the same time think about the dangers of a negative interest rate environment. But I do foresee that if there is further weaknesses, I don't think Bank Negara will hesitate to consider reducing interest rate further in the second half.
Okay, thank you, Dato'. So I think we are almost to the end of this session. But before we end this session, we just want to get some words of wisdom from Dato' Ong. So Dato' Ong, do you have any words of wisdom for our audience today?
If there's anything I can say is that do not be too so-called depressed, because every time there is a crisis, there will always be an opportunity. And clearly, as I mentioned, even if you do not go and expand, as competition so-called weeds out the weaker players, those who are there and can survive, they will become stronger. So just need to have that kind of optimistic behavior. And clearly during this time, it shows how much you're willing to roll up your sleeves and execute well. Because in the good times, maybe in the last 5 years, many businesses have just got cheap capital and a lot of support from all types of people that they can keep on growing. And they never thought of a stop and a chance where there's some consolidation. So this is an opportunity that you can really look back at where areas that you have been not paying a lot of attention to. And at the same time, I think for everyone out there who are Malaysians, I think we start thinking a little bit about Malaysia, how we can help Malaysia. We talk about the tourism industry, for instance, hospitality. I think many of us have gone around the world to all kinds of places in the world, but we probably haven't visited some parts of Malaysia even. So I would encourage them to, first thing, if you want to help the hospitality industry, help our Malaysian hotels. Cuti Malaysia, when the lockdown is more gradual, help our hospitality. Visit parts of Malaysia that you've not visited before and buy Malaysian, because Malaysia also produce very good products actually. So this and go for homegrown accounting firms, YYC, because they are all kinds of services they provide for entrepreneurs and SMEs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato' Ong. Datin Shin, do you also have some words of wisdom for our audience today?
Oh, I love Dato' Ong's advice. Maybe I'll just add on to that. As entrepreneurs, we are very busy with so many things, and 101 things that we have to deal with. But at times like this, as business owners, we must be very, very focused. And our focus must be providing the right direction for our company company, we need to find money. We need to drive our people to really go fighting with us, and we need 110 or 200% on execution. So these are the 4 areas that all business owners need to focus on. And there are many distractions outside, but at times like this, especially when we go back to work, now it's CMCO, but when we fully go back to work, it's the time that we really need to every day ask ourselves, are these are my priorities today really driving us to achieve our sales, or is it driving us to prolong our cash flow? So that's my final little bit of advice for everyone. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Ong. Thank you, Dr. Shin. I hope this wisdom of advice can, help all our audience here, especially those that are running business. Hopefully, eventually we'll overcome this pandemic issue. So once again, thanks for joining us. Thank you so much, Dr. Ong, for joining our session. And also thank you so much, Dr. Shin, for joining us today. So hopefully our audience can get a good insight, knowledge, and information on how to overcome this pandemic. So thank you so much. And I will end here today. Thanks for joining in, and see you guys soon. Thank you so much.